So, here's a big question for you. Can a 6-month lifestyle program, just 6 months, really lower your risk of heart disease for years to come? It's a huge question, and researchers in Japan set out to find the answer. But what they discovered, and what we're going to get into, is that finding the truth, well, it required a very clever solution to a hidden problem in their data. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the problem they were trying to solve. Then, we'll dive into the actual experiment they set up. After that, we hit a snag, a critical flaw in the data. But don't worry, because that leads us to the hero of our story, a brilliant statistical tool they used to fix it. That'll show us the program's true impact and, finally, why this whole method is so incredibly important. All right, first things first, let's set the stage. To really get why this study is such a big deal, you have to understand the challenge it was designed to tackle. And believe me, in Japan, the stakes were incredibly high. So this is the fundamental question, right? We're not just talking about a temporary health kick. The real goal is lasting change. Public health officials had to know, could a short, focused program actually have a long-term payoff against a major health threat? And that threat? It's heart disease. It is the #2 cause of death in the entire country. So finding ways to prevent it wasn't just a good idea, it was an urgent national priority. This is way bigger than individual health. It's a massive public health puzzle. So how do you tackle a problem that big? Well, these researchers rolled up their sleeves and designed a hands-on program right in a community called Soka City. The setup seems pretty straightforward. They had one group, the intervention group, that got the whole 9 yards. A 6-month intensive program, personal counseling, group sessions, regular follow-ups, you name it. And then, for comparison, they had a much larger control group that just got the standard health pamphlets and newsletters. The idea was to see if that intensive approach really moved the needle. And this wasn't just a quick check-in. They tracked everybody for 18 months. They took measurements at the very beginning, then again right after the 6-month program ended, and then one last time a full year later to see if any of the positive changes actually stuck. And this is where things get really interesting. Because on the surface, everything looks fine. But there was a huge problem hiding in plain sight. See, people weren't randomly assigned to these groups. Participants actually chose whether they wanted to join the intensive program or not. And that's a classic research problem called self-selection. It forces you to ask a really tough question. Was this a fair race from the starting line? And the data screamed no. It wasn't a fair race at all. When you look at the numbers from day one, the people who chose the program were already different. They were a bit older, they smoked less, and they exercised more. In other words, the group that was about to get all the extra help already had a head start. So that's a huge problem, right? If your special program group already has a head start, how on earth can you tell if the program actually worked? Well, this is where a brilliant statistical tool steps in to save the day. It's called ANCOVA. That stands for Analysis of Covariance. And honestly, the best way to think about it is like a handy tap in a race. You know, if one runner starts 10 yards ahead of everyone else, you'd adjust their final time to see who was truly the fastest runner. ANCOVA does that exact same thing, but with data. It mathematically erases those starting advantages so you can see the real effect of the program. So how does this statistical magic work? Well, it's actually pretty logical. First, ANCOVA goes in and identifies all those starting differences, the age, the smoking, the exercise. Then, and this is the key part, it mathematically adjusts the final health results to pretend those differences never existed. And what you're left with, at the very end, is the pure, clean, isolated effects of the program itself. It's like a filter for bias. So with this amazing tool in their back pocket, the researchers could finally and confidently look at their results and answer that big question we started with. And the verdict? Oh yeah, it worked. Big time. After ANCOVA did its job and leveled the playing field, the intervention group saw their 10-year risk for heart disease drop by a statistically significant 1.12%. That's a real, measurable impact. But what about the long run? That's the million-dollar question. And get this, even a full year after the program was over, at the 18-month mark, they still had a significant risk reduction of almost a full percent. The positive effects stuck around. That's exactly what you hope to see. This chart just lays it all out, crystal clear. Look at that. The intervention group's risk went down, just like we said. But at the same time, the control group's risk actually went up a tiny bit. So the program didn't just help, it actively reversed the expected trend. And the good news didn't stop there. The program also led to real, lasting improvements in other key things like weight, BMI, waist size, and triglycerides. It was a comprehensive win for their cardiovascular health. Okay, let's bring this all home. Because the biggest takeaway here isn't just that a lifestyle program can work, it's about how we know for sure that it worked, even when we start with messy, imperfect, real-world data.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Without a tool like ANCOVA, this whole study would have a giant asterisk next to it. We'd always be wondering, well, maybe those people were just more motivated to begin with. It's the statistical method that transforms a messy experiment into a rock-solid conclusion.
So what's the bottom line? It's really 4 key things. 1, the program definitely worked. 2, its effects actually lasted. 3, and this is huge, real-world data is almost always messy and uneven. And 4, that's okay, because with the right statistical tools, we can cut through the noise and find the truth. And that leaves us with one final pretty powerful thought. This study is such a great reminder that in science, how we analyze our data is every bit as important as the data itself. It kind of makes you wonder, right? How many other scientific truths that we take for granted are only possible because of a quiet, unsung statistical hero, just like ANCOVA?